All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're probably going to give it about 5 minutes to let everyone enter. Thank you all. Like Aaron said, feel free to post in the chat, post where you're from, post the size of your sales team. The first webinar was really about getting as much information to you all as possible. This iteration of the same webinar series is really just to make that information actionable, right? So the goal of what me and Aaron are going to do today is we're not only going to tell you about speed to lead and unlocking the most power from your sales team through HubSpot and Aloware. We're actually going to show you a few tips and tricks on how to do it.
We're going deep.
Yeah.
We're going deep.
Gonna give a few more minutes for everyone to join here, about 2 more minutes, and then we'll kick it off. We just want to make the most of this hour. These guys, both Joe and Aaron, have a lot to cover, and they are masters in their own respects of sales and HubSpot. So looking forward to learning with everyone. So get strapped in for the next hour. It's going to be fun.
Harrison, what's up, dude? Sorry, I'm seeing people that I am familiar with. Let's see. Blaine, Camilla, Gloria, Grace, Jackson, John, Will. What's up, guys? And by the way, Andrea, just so you're aware, the open chat is disabled, so it's just Q&A.
Oh, damn. Okay, let me.
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna be able to fix it now, but
yeah,
just fair warning.
Thank you.
All right, and we're going to start at 1:05.
We got some jams, some tunes. I don't know if we can turn those on.
Yeah.
Feel a little music. What's up, Riley?
Drowned deep inside you, so you lost and lonely, you strange as angels.
There we go.
All right. It's
all right. We got the open chat going now, I think. No?
Couldn't tell you.
All right. All right, guys. Excited to finally get this going. This is revolutionizing sales. It's been a long time coming for us to put this together finally. So first and foremost, I want to introduce both of your hosts here. They're going to be both coming to you from Miami. So if you are in the South Florida area, really urge you to reach out to them, whether you want to talk about sales, HubSpot, or just, hang out. They're both amazing guys. So if you are in South Florida, drop them a note. And want to introduce the speakers and then kind of talk about what our agenda is going to cover today. It's really exciting. So first, we're going to have Joe Bianco here, who is our director of sales. He's a leader on our side of the team, where he's pretty much leading the charge for not just the sales reps. He's covering SDRs, BDRs, and also partnerships. And he's a numbers guy at the end of the day. So whether it's numbers of how many calls you're doing or how you're translating that into revenue, he's really going to give you some great insight onto how to bring those two together. More calls, more revenue. So, and then we've got our special guest here, Aaron Platt, HubSpot Master. He is the founder and CEO of Sales Momentum, who is one of our premier partners. If you don't know about them, look them up. If you need help with your HubSpot implementation or you're just having trouble, call them. You won't regret it. So without further ado, I'll walk through the agenda and then kick it off to Joe. So we're going to be giving you strategies for how to accelerate sales cycles, deal closures, drive results, and do this in a way where you're doing it all within HubSpot and with the power of Aloware. One of the main things we're going to talk about is automations and the power of automations. We live in a world where that is the norm now, so use it. Work smarter, not harder. and excited to get this going. So don't worry, we're gonna have time for some Q&As at the end of this. So let's enjoy and learn. And Joe, please take the stage.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you all for joining. We're super excited to get started. For those of you who weren't on the call at the beginning, the goal of this webinar is really to showcase everything that we're talking about, right? Aloware, speed to lead, and in a perfect marriage, how HubSpot plays a role in that. We're going to not only talk about these 3 different topics, we're going to actually show you live a couple things that Aaron and his team are doing to ultimately drive all these things forward, right? So I would hope everyone on this call is familiar with Aloware. If you're not super familiar with Aloware, we are a certified HubSpot app and native integration. So we integrate seamlessly with HubSpot to the point where you can actually make all of your dials and send text messages directly through the platform. The beautiful thing about that integration, and like Andrea said, is the ability to report. So the ability to report on all of your data from Aloware directly within HubSpot. To the core, we are a business phone system. So a lot of our clients are in the high ticket space, the coaching space, as well as, general SaaS and tech companies. We check every box from the customer service side standpoint with our CSAT ratings and wonderful inbound routing, all the way to outbound delivery through power dialing, our AI SMS bot, and a ton of fun other stuff for you. So the main goal of this talk, again, is going to be showcasing that automation, showcasing the use cases and features for Aloware and HubSpot, and ultimately driving some changes for everyone today. So a little bit about Aaron Platt. I've had the pleasure of working with Aaron for probably close to a year now. The relationship between Aloware and Aaron really strengthened through their event that they did in August. So they hosted an awesome mastermind event. It was the Sales Momentum team essentially teaching everyone how to run a business, how to run a sales team, how to run operations, and all that stuff. So I do see, a few familiar faces on the attendee list who attended the event. So great to see you as well. And like it says here, right, Aaron is one of the most sought after business consultants. Why? Because he understands systems and he understands companies, right? He fully understands who his client is and what they're trying to achieve. The awesome thing about Aaron is he has a lot of experience as a high ticket closer himself, as well as building sales teams and building companies end to end. So I know we're going to be mostly focusing on sales today, but Aaron and this whole Sales Momentum's team expertise really lies in building a business from A to Z. And the most important but most overlooked part of that is the systems, right? So today we're talking about 2 systems, one being Aloware, the second being HubSpot. And ultimately, again, we're going to showcase how to drive value from both of those systems to your sales team. So why integrate a contact center software to HubSpot? I'm going to speak generally about contact center softwares while still knowing that Aloware has the best native integration. The point is keeping all of your data in one place, right? Oftentimes when people implement new systems, as you all know on this call, it's not just 1, it's not just 2, it's 4, 5, or 6. And the important thing behind all these systems, whether it be ticketing, project management, or live chat, is being able to integrate natively with your CRM. In this case, both me and Aaron use HubSpot. We're HubSpot admins, and we are, huge supporters of what HubSpot does. The beautiful thing, as you can see here on the screen, is, again, all of that information from Aloware is pushing directly into the CRM, right? Why is that important? Sales reps no longer have to navigate between 2 different platforms to do their job, right? So if you're talking about the job of a setter, it's to get those appointments set, right? It's to be able to track your leads, to be able to know exactly where you are with your leads, and ultimately to be able to set those appointments to drive business forward. On the closer side of things, or the account executive side of things, it's to maintain your deals, manage and nurture your leads, and make sure that you're keeping up with those deals to ultimately get the close. The awesome thing about Aloware and HubSpot is they both independently and natively do all of those things under one platform. So on unlocking potential with automation, I know this slide looks pretty similar to the one that we had last time. Again, the big improvement here is we're really going to show you how to do everything that we're talking about. And the main takeaways here are going to be increased efficiency, improvement in lead nurturing and management, enhanced customer relationship, faster decision-making, scalability and consistently. And the most important one, as you invest in all these systems, it is expensive, right? It does get pricey to get all the bills at the end of the month. The exciting thing is through all these systems, you're able to save time, which in turn saves you money. And that's what we're going to showcase here today. So what can you automate? That's a great question. And, the real answer in my eyes is everything. But in terms of where HubSpot and Aloware come in, it's auto dialing and pre-recorded voicemails. So those voicemail drops after the call ends. It's lead routing through our advanced system of either HubSpot workflows or Alaware's internal workflow and sequences. The next is going to be lead management, which really takes place in HubSpot, but also Aloware does an awesome job of it if you're solely using it. The next is booking appointments, the most important thing. Next is ticket creation, CRM updates and call logs, reports, all follow-up communications, responses to inquiries, customer lists, and way more. Aaron, I'll kick it off to you.
All right, perfect. I'm going to steal a screen share if that's cool.
You got it.
Let me grab that. All right, perfect. Let me jump in here. All right, cool, guys. So we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. There's going to be a lot of resources that we go over that we're going to go ahead and give out to you guys. So first thing I want to point out is...
Hit slideshow on the top right, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll pull in just a second.
Awesome.
So the first thing I want to point out is what we're going to go over specifically is primarily around getting that lead to booking percentage way up between the combination of Aloware as well as HubSpot and the sales team and how you can get it actually implemented. Adoption is a big problem when you're rolling out new tools, new process, new systems, right? It's usually pretty difficult to get it to stick with your sales team, especially if you have a larger sales team. So we're going to cover all of that kind of top down. And really what we're going to be talking about is how to grow revenue with what you already have running. So not increasing lead flow or anything along those lines, but converting at a higher rate of what you actually have. So using Aloware and HubSpot to increase the throughput, okay, of your overall system so that you guys can obviously do more revenue, your sales team can have a better culture, you guys have more accountability, and so on and so forth. First thing, our background, some of our clients, we work with a lot of different individuals across many different industries. If you guys want to check us out, salesmomentum.io. Going back and really getting into this. So the first thing I want to point out, I'm going to jump into the screen share here now. We still good? Okay, perfect. So first thing I want to point out is most businesses lose up to 50% of potential sales due to just inefficient systems. Okay. Meaning leads are falling through the cracks. There's not a lot of nurture after a certain point in time. People aren't getting to leads fast enough. Setters aren't being delegated leads properly. There's no prioritization around the list, right? And so on and so forth. And what I really want to point out first, okay, is that we always want to find the biggest area of opportunity before we go into building anything else, okay? So a lot of you guys probably have decent foundations built. You're using Aloware, using HubSpot, you're using some kind of system, right? And you're trying to figure out how to grow revenue, and you're looking at the entirety of your entire process. Back-end revenue, upsell percentages, front-end revenue, more leads being booked, show rates, rebook rates, all these different things that, yeah, they matter. But what I really want to talk about, what I want to make sure I hit home for you guys is that the closest we can get to the point of entry is going to give you the most impact, okay, for your efforts. Meaning, if we increase the show rate here, right, and let's say we go up 5%, 10%, okay, after we implement some of this stuff, right? Everything below it is going to get affected. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is this top part right here, this lead to booking percentage. So how many leads you're actually getting in and how many you're getting set onto the calendar for your sales team. Okay. And that's what we're going to dial in a ton of focus around. There's going to be a few other pieces that we cover, but that is as close to the entry point as we can get. And it'll impact everything in terms of metrics behind it. If you look at this, right, just a very current example, right? Random example here. I just want to check the chat. Yeah, thanks for the meme comment, Andrea. So let's say you guys are doing 1,500 leads a month, right? You guys are booking about 10% of them. You have 150 bookings. Your show rate's right around 60%. Means you're taking about 90, right? You're losing about 60 to no show rates. Let's say you rebook at about 5%, right? You're going to be taking about 93 calls a month. Okay. Let's say you're at a 25% close. That's about 23, 23 and a half, maybe 24 deals, right? Average deal price, 10K, average cash up front because you don't close in PIF all the time, right? So 10,000 is your average revenue per deal closed. Okay. If we just shift from 10% on the lead to booking to 15, so a 5% increase, right? We're going to add an additional 75 bookings per month. Okay. About 900 annualized, right? In terms of take-in, we're going to add about almost 50 a month, about almost 550 or a little over 550 a year, right? And what that's going to do for revenue is if you look down here, total gross revenue, 232 to 348, right? And cash up front, 116 to about 174. Okay. So please, if you take anything away from this, focus as close to the front end of your system as you can if you're trying to get big impact. Okay. Because this will directly impact everything behind it. All right. Now, moving on to the next point. So what do we need for everything we're about to go over? You need Aloware, you need a power dialer, right? You need HubSpot or another viable CRM. You obviously need leads, okay? And need a motivated and hungry sales team, okay? Now, the way that we look at systems or business in general is you have mass and you have velocity, okay? And that's going to bring you to momentum, which is obviously a company that's scaling. They're in eustress. Problems are opportunities. They feel really good, great culture. Everybody's aligned, okay? The way that you do this is by getting your mass, your people, process, and structure to go along with your velocity, which is your systems. So your accountability, your automation, your prioritization, all of the stuff that's going to help your people and process basically increase, right? Or multiply whatever they're doing input times output. So whatever they're putting in, they're getting more out. Okay. So that's the point of these back-end systems. All right. Now moving into this, hey, Gavin, I can hear myself echoing. Sorry, guys. I've got somebody in the other room with their speakers on. So ineffective systems can undermine even the best leaders and teams. Okay. What does that mean? It means you can have great teams, great talent, but if the process and the systems behind it are mediocre or worse, not effective, broken, right? It can make great people look really, really bad. Now, on the flip side of that, if you have great systems, great process, right, it can make even mediocre people look pretty damn good. All right. So what we're going to talk about is one, what makes a system, right? It's your people, it's your process, and it's accountability, which is what creates a system. Okay. Now, moving into this real quick. So we're going to do this a little bit backwards. All right. We're going to talk about systems first. That's what you guys are here for. We're going to get on that. We're going to talk about process, and then we're going to go into people. Now, you're probably wondering why I put these up here. Okay. First thing I want to point out is if we don't get entry points, lead delegation, and prioritization around our leads set up, this is kind of what it looks like for a lot of people. This is marketing. They're bringing leads in and they're just dumping it over to the sales team who's basically taking the water straight on the top of their head. Okay. They don't know which leads to work. They don't know how long to work them. They don't know which ones are active. They're just basically reaching into a big bucket and trying to work leads. Okay. Now, what that does for culture, what it does for your return on ad spend, what it does for churn, etc., is this right here. Basically, everything's in chaos. You're sitting there holding a bag of fire, whatever this is, right? So let's go ahead and fix that. Now, first thing I want to talk about is entry points. Okay. Systems always have entry points. All right. Entry points are when you attract a lead or new data and it comes into the system. Okay, into the CRM, into Aloware. All right. The way that we look at entry points is we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 level entry points. And the reason these are split up is because they have different correspondence paths, different paths into the sales process, depending on which source they're coming from. Okay. And this is going to matter a lot with what we're about to go over. All right. So tier 1, think of cold leads. Okay. These are people that either you are scraping data for, or maybe you're buying lead lists. Maybe you're doing direct cold outreach on something like LinkedIn, right? Maybe they're coming in from a source that is, for example, like a large podcast or a newsletter. There's not a lot of intent there, right? You're not necessarily sure what they're actually coming in for, okay? Or they may not even know who you are, which means there's going to be a lot longer of a nurture cadence and different paths that people can go down from the tier 1 source before they actually make it to your sales team. Now, tier 2, which is what we're going to be talking about today specifically. These are leads coming off of any kind of asset that you create. Okay, it could be organic content, it could be a funnel, it could be a lead magnet. Okay, these are people who are coming in with intent, right? And you want to get to them quickly, hence speed to lead. We want to prioritize these leads, we want to focus on them, and we want to get to them very, very quickly, right? And we don't want to let these leads fall through the cracks. Tier 3 is going to be, for some of you guys, channel partnerships, affiliates, referrals. For example, us to Aloware, we would be a tier 3 source for them. Okay, if I bring a deal to Joe and Andrea, that lead doesn't go into automated nurture correspondence and then get handed to a setter and then called, right? That lead goes straight into the sales process. They book right away. They already have context, right? So these entry points matter, and you need to get these set up properly. Okay, now let's talk about lead delegation and lead prioritization. This is going to be one of the biggest pieces that if you guys take anything, please, please, please just do this. Okay, we're going to give you guys, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to give you guys a bunch of email templates, SMS cadences that we've proven across hundreds of different builds that work really, really well, so that you guys have no excuses on getting this set up. And it should make you able to get it built and in place a lot faster. All right. Now, I'm a visual person. I like screen shares. I'm not a very good presentation deck guy, right? As you can tell by my memes and GIFs and all the other stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk straight into lead delegation and prioritization. Okay. Now, first thing I want to point out here is when leads come in through a tier 2 source, okay, right? They're either opting in or they're downloading something, or maybe it's an opt-in or an application, right? And then you have those that opt in, do the application and book, and they go all the way through and start the sales process. What we're going to be talking about is everybody that falls through on the front end without actually booking a meeting or, you know, buying your product or service or whatever the case may be. Okay. Now, before I move forward, can anybody in the chat explain why we would not want to delegate leads into just an open pool? And maybe Joe, you can chime in here. But does anybody have any reason why we wouldn't want to just drop leads straight into a big open pool, a big bucket, and tell our setting team or our sales team to go dig?
I'm going to answer here because I think that the chat is still disabled for the entire group, just for the panelists. I think we have it. The reason why, Aaron, is because, you know, like he's talking about, leads come from different sources. They come at different times, and there's something called lead scoring that plays a really big role in this, right? Lead scoring could be hot, cold, or warm. Lead scoring could be they filled out some kind of questionnaire and their answers matched, you know, what a really good lead that has turned into a closed deal is, right? So it's important to bucket out these leads into the different tiers because it allows your setters to know who is a lead priority. So why is that important, right? It's important because if all leads are just getting dropped in a big bucket, like Aaron's saying, they don't know who to reach out to first. They don't know where the leads came from, and they don't have an understanding of who the other person is, right? Using Aaron's example of how we work with sales momentum, when they give us a, you know, tier 3 lead, right? And they're saying, hey, they're ready to get set up. That means that they have a full understanding of the platform and the offer. If that got dropped into a lead bucket with 1,000 other leads, there'd simply be no way to prioritize that lead, which would ultimately mean the deal's closing a lot slower.
100%. Another piece is, for example, how are we going to hold people accountable if no leads are assigned to anybody, right? That's bullet number 1. Bullet number 2 is, if you guys have higher ticket services, or maybe you guys are a software platform where there's education cycles that need to go through. Let's say I call Joe, Joe answers, I build a connection with him, and then Andrea calls him 15 minutes after I get off the phone with him, right? There's a lot of crossover that can happen unless you are delegating. And if you aren't delegating directly to individuals on the team, what's going to start to happen is you're going to have a lack of accountability holding them to the metrics and what we're going to go over a little bit later. Okay. So as these leads come in, we want to obviously delegate. right? We're going to start the setter nurture. So this is where Aloware comes in. We're going to basically enroll them into a sequence through Aloware, and we're going to enroll them into a cadence inside of HubSpot for email. Okay. Now, you guys are probably wondering why, right? Obviously, we want to get them some correspondence. We want to get to them quickly. But this is where our lead prioritization is going to come in. Okay. Now, I've got an example. I've blocked out some stuff. This is a live account, so I'm not going to go too far through it. But the way that we delegate our leads, okay, is through a P1, P2, P3 system, okay? And P just stands for prioritization, okay? Now, when these leads come in, right, they watch a video, they opt in, they get a lead magnet, whatever the case may be, and they go into the automation from either the setter or from the company, right? What we're doing in the P1 bucket is we're prioritizing all of the leads, okay, that are from, for example, 0 to 5 days old, okay? These are all of your newest, hottest leads. They're your P1 bucket. This is where your setters or your sales team is going to do a primary or highest priority targeting, okay? Now, because we are using HubSpot, because we're sending out emails, because we're texting them, because we're doing all this stuff, because we have tracking set up, right? What we can do prior to power dialing is we can go into our P1 list, and typically, obviously I have the filter turned off, but this is going to be filtered to only the leads that you own, okay? And what we're going to do before we start dialing is we're going to go to last marketing email opened, or last link click, or last visit website, or website visit, sorry. So we can start to prioritize these leads not only by newest and hottest, right? So we can get to them quickly, but also we can prioritize them based on activity, okay? So if your reps are waking up in the middle, or in the early in the morning, right? They're about to get started. It's 9 a.m., right? They had a bunch of leads come in from overnight. Obviously, we have email nurture. We have different cadences going towards them, right? Or we should, right? And the best way before we click open our power dialer and add all of these calls to our power dial sequence, right? We want to filter them based on who's active right now. Who's been active 15 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, an hour ago. So we're not just taking our hottest leads, meaning 0 to 5 days, 0 to 10 days. It's going to depend on your lead flow, but we're also filtering them based on who's been engaging with us, right? Who's active. When your reps are calling and they see that this person opened this email, clicked on this link, revisited this page, right? One, it gives them obviously easy conversation, but two, if I call Joe and Joe opted in last night and he opened an email 5 minutes ago and I say, hey, Joe, I saw you checked out my email, wanted to give you a call, see if we could connect. It allows the conversation to move a lot smoother, and it also rakes up your call to connect percentage. Okay. What you don't want your setters doing or your sales team doing is reaching into a big bucket, just calling buckets and buckets of leads, right? Not knowing where these people are at, not knowing what's going on with the lead. And for example, if you have 200 leads in this bucket, right, you have some high lead volume and your setter is calling top down, but at the bottom, right, you have 10 or 15 or 20 leads that came in a little bit later than these other ones, but they're active right now. You may not even get to them. Okay. So this is extremely, extremely easy to set up, and it's extremely, extremely effective. Okay. If you just change this and you start to bucket by P1, P2, P3, and you start to set up these filters this way, right? This is how you're going to lift that lead to booking rate just by doing a few things. Now, how do you actually build this, right? The way that this works is you're going to use advanced filters and you're going to use a list membership. Okay. So you're going to create a list inside of HubSpot and you're going to label it hot leads, qualified, no call booked, or opt-in, no call booked, or application, no call booked. And you're going to set the filters to filter everybody in that doesn't have a meeting set. Okay. And you're going to filter out anybody that gets labeled, for example, disposition, bad data, unqualified, for example, X amount of times contacted with no response, right? Now, this is where you can start to get the ROAS up quite a bit. And I'm gonna kind of come back around to this in a second. P1, 0 to 5 days. P2, 6 to 15. Okay. P3, 16 plus. Okay. The reason that we're going to do this is because we want our newer leads hit first, obviously. We want our secondary list to be just behind that first list. And our third list is everything, okay, that's not our P1 or P2. Okay. And what this allows you guys to do is give your setting team a very simple, very scalable way to train them on how to work, how to prospect, and how to do these things. Now, a step forward or a step further is if you start to set up these lists that filter the P1s, P2s, and P3s on the time frame, so 0 to 5, 6 to 15, 16 to 30, right? Or 16 plus, you can start to trigger different Aloware sequences and different email sequences based on the age of the lead. Okay. You can also start to set up, for example, if 3 emails get opened, automatically text. Okay. If this email gets opened, if this link gets clicked on, text from the rep, right? So we can start to help our setting team and basically our sales team work these leads in a very automated approach, but also with them hitting the most basically highest priority leads and having the highest connect rate. Okay. Now, going a little bit past this, okay. Open leads. This is a little bit more advanced. So if some of you guys have a bigger team, okay, when we delegate a lead to an individual, right, and let's say they're not active that day, they're not starting to dial until, for example, I don't know, 5 o'clock p.m., right? But they've been getting delegated leads all day. Taking this a step further, what you can start to do inside of HubSpot is if there's no contact within an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of that lead being delegated to the setter, you can pull that lead, right? So pull it from them. They get reassigned. Okay. So for example, all of these leads, okay, in this bucket are open and they've been pulled from somebody in the last 24 hours. Okay. Now, what you can do with this, which is actually really cool and it's a lot of fun, is based off of this, when somebody gets the lead pulled, you're going to tag them as the person who the deal got or the lead got reassigned. And if that lead closes inside of your Slack channel or your wins channel or whatever the case may be, you can say deal or lead redelegated from Aaron, deal closed by Joe. Okay. Simple, but super powerful. If every time you lose a deal because you just didn't get to that lead fast enough, what is that going to do? Inherently, it's going to make you want to work your deals faster, work your leads faster, get to them quicker. Okay. Now, making sure I'm on track here. Talked about lead delegation. We talked about lead prioritization. Okay. I do have a bunch of email templates, SMS stuff that I'm going to go and go ahead and shoot out to you guys so you guys can set this up. One last thing inside of HubSpot that I want to make sure you guys are aware of is when you're building your email cadences out, right? It doesn't matter if you're sending it from the CEO, you're sending it as the company, info at, or you're sending it from your actual setters, okay, or from your sales team. When you're in the settings and you actually create the template, okay, what you're going to want to do is you can either do from name and you can put in a token. So you can do setter owner or contact owner, right? So it always sends from whoever is assigned to the lead. You can also send it from, for example, if I wanted to send these emails out, right, and I want the reply to go somewhere else, right, I can set the reply to as the setter owner, okay? So meaning you don't have to create a bunch of different templates for a whole bunch of different people. You can create one template, set the tokens up. So anytime the lead gets delegated, if it's sending this email, it's going to send as Joe, it's going to reply to as Joe, or whatever the case may be, okay? So simple, but it's going to save you guys a lot of time when you're starting to set this up and you guys start implementing this. Now, going through this, let's talk about what happens when the leads go all the way through and they don't move forward, right? So they go through the P1, they go through the P2, they go through the P3, right? They're not bad data. They're not unqualified. We just haven't been able to get them booked, or we haven't been able to get a hold of them. Now, what most people do, and this is what we call dead pools, right? What happens is those individuals fall into a bucket of just dead leads. They're not being worked. They're not being called. They're just basically living there past the 30, 60, 90-day mark, and they're just dying, okay? What we want to do is we want to push all of those leads that make it all the way through, and you can set the filter of the line in the sand as, for example, 20 times contacted, right? No answer, okay? No response. Very simple. You can set it up. If they pass that threshold, we are going to delegate that back to the marketing team, okay? Now, what we're setting up is we're setting up a loop. So all of our leads, they get worked through our P1, P2, P3 system. If they make it all the way through, but we don't actually get them to move forward, we're dropping them back to marketing. Marketing is reworking them. And if they come active again, for example, they open X amount of emails, they click back a link, they revisit our website, whatever, we're going to delegate them back into the front of the process. Okay. I'm hoping this makes sense. I'm going a little quick, but I want to make sure I have enough time. Okay. What that's going to do for marketing is it's going to give them a very hard list that has already been worked. So you can be very specific on how you're nurturing this, right? You can give them free assets, lead magnets, whatever, but we're trying to re-engage them. So if our ad spend is converting leads at $50, we're not just taking hundreds and hundreds of leads a year and basically letting them sit there, because that equates to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. All right. So moving along, let me pop this back open. And we're gonna have time for Q&A at the end, so I'm gonna move a little bit quickly. Slideshow. All right. Next thing I want to show you guys is the reporting if you're gonna run this system that you must have set up. Okay. So inside of HubSpot, okay, as well as Aloware, Aloware has some really good reporting as well. What you want to start to do is you want to build out basically your P1, and I just put the P3 because I didn't have enough room for P1, P2. You want to start to build out how many contacts are assigned to each setter inside of the 0 to 10 day basically mark. Okay, so in their P1 list. So 0 to 10, 0 to 5, whatever your lead flow equates to. All right. Now, count of activities is going to be filtered to outbound calls only. Okay, so this is the number of dials outbound made to these people in the 0 to 10 day mark. Okay, and this is active. It's constantly updating. This is the average number of times that your team is contacting leads in a 0 to 10 day format. Okay. So from when the lead enters to day number 10, they are on average getting contacted this amount of times. Okay. So this is how you can gauge whether you need more setters, whether your reps are doing their job or not, right, etc. And this right here is going to be the average time it takes them, right? So based on everybody they get booked, this is the average time it takes them from lead being delegated to them or contact creation, right, to them getting a meeting set. Okay. The reason that this is important is because if you look at this is the 0 to 10 day list. This is your 30 through 90 or whatever setting you guys set up for your P3. You can see how many leads they currently have, the kind of activities, and where the drop off in contact numbers ends at. Okay. So on average, right, within 90 days, every lead that you bring in is getting contacted based on this. So the average is 8 outbound calls over 90 days. Okay. And from the 30 day to 90 day mark, or whatever your P3 list is, right, after that happens, after that lead makes it past that, right, the average duration of when they get booked is actually, 5, 10, 15x longer, okay, than obviously in the initial period. Okay, so this is why when Joe talks about speed lead, and when we're talking about setting up this automated nurture using the P1 strategy, right, your fastest bookings and your highest quality bookings, if I might add, are going to come from that P1 timeframe. Okay, the P3, okay, is always there, and it's there because that's where the biggest pileup is going to come. And as long as your reps, before they hit their P3 list, are filtering for activity, it will bring, even if you have a few thousand leads, the active people who have been there for a while to the top of the list. Okay. One last thing I want to note. One of our clients, he's a freaking monster genius brainiac, but he showed me this and I wanted to show you guys this as well. What this is tracking is how many dials, texts, and conversations, right, each person or each rep, it filters by rep, is doing on an hour-to-hour basis, okay, through Aloware and HubSpot, right? One thing that we've noticed and found to be true is when reps come to you guys and they say, oh, lead flow sucks, and or not lead flow, but lead quality is not good. I can't get anybody to answer. I'm hitting my KPIs, but I'm not getting the results, right? A lot of the times what we found, probably about 80 to 90% of the time, is that what they're doing is they're batch calling once a day, twice a day. Okay. And what that actually means is that all the leads are flowing into them and they're maybe only doing 100 to 150 dials between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Why is that important? It's because when the leads are coming in, they're not getting to them. They're not working consistently throughout the day. They're just sitting there, loading their power dialer once, ripping an hour, hitting their call volume, expecting to get good results. Great setting teams are active throughout the entire day. Okay. And even if they're not doing as much as they would in an hour by just sitting there and doing 1 power hour, 2 power hours, whatever the case may be, the results of getting calls booked and the revenue they're bringing in and all the things we want from them are going to be 10 times better. Okay. So when you're looking at your setting team and you're trying to figure out if they're, okay, hey, they're all hitting their 100 dials a day, but the results are just really crappy. They're telling me lead flow and quality of blah, 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 it all sucks. You need to start looking at what they're actually doing, when they're doing it, how quickly they're, going to actually hit these leads. And you need to start looking at this too, right? Start understanding their averages and how many times they're actually contacting these leads, et cetera. Some of you guys would probably be very alarmed if you built this report. First 10 days, some of you guys are probably in the 1 to 2 range, maybe, right? Which is not good. It's not good at all. Okay. Moving along here. All right. So quick recap. We covered entry points, P1, P2, or sorry, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, right? Cold, warm, and then you've got your referrals, your channel partnerships, et cetera. Okay. Tier 2 is what we're talking about. We're talking about delegating the leads as soon as the lead obviously drops out of the funnel. So give it a, 5 minutes, 10 minutes from opt-in, check if they book, check if the application's filled out, and then you start your delegation workflow, right? We talked about prioritizing leads in a P1, P2, P3 basis, okay? And we talked about leveraging the automated correspondence to allow us to see who's active, all right? Now, advanced, again, I talked about the redelegation automation. Don't start with that. If you have a much bigger team and you really want to hit on speed to lead and you want to drive that home, okay, you can start to add in the redelegation automation, and maybe I can send you guys something if that's something that you would like to do. Let me just pop open the chat real quick. Cool. All right. Cool. Now, time for a quick process, right? We talked about this in the beginning, guys. People, process, accountability, all right? We cannot just expect our lead to booking percentage to go up just by putting this system in. A lot of people just bolt on and bolt on and bolt on and buy tech and build software and build automations and build and build and build, and they never actually fix what's really the issue. Okay. Whenever we're working with a client and we're trying to understand what they're trying to solve for, okay, the very first thing we do is we look at the people, which we're going to talk about next. Okay. Then we look at the process that those people are running. So are these people actually following the script? Are they doing a good job? Are they hitting their numbers? Are they doing, batch dialing? Are they dialing throughout the day? Right. Then we move on to the process. Does the process work? Right. And then we go to the system. We look at the automations, the smart views, these different things. Okay. Now we're talking about a process, very, very simple, easy way to do this. Something that we always set up, especially with our clients, is we go through. So any setter that comes on, right? One, they have a very simple, easy way to get ramped up on the system. Okay. So it's scalable for you guys. So you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours training them, right? So basic account setup, installing Aloware, getting that set up, how to create default booking links, saving your smart views, overview of the system. We define all of the smart views, right? And we always give checklists. Okay. Now these checklists basically are morning, right? Midday and end of day. And what this does is it gives them alternatives on how to produce results in a very, very simple, easy step-by-step way. This is going to be our process. Okay. So if we build a system like this, we need a process behind it. And what we're going to start to tell the reps, every end of day, right? You're going to work through your P1, P2s, P3s in this order. You're going to power dial your my no-shows, which again, last thing I'll point out on the smart views is every time somebody no-shows, if a setter's known, it's going to delegate back to the setter, start that automated correspondence, and it's going to drop back into the smart views real quick. Smart views, my no-shows. It's going to load all of their no-shows. And again, the emails, everything along those lines that are triggering, we're going to power dial to try to do what? We want to, now that we've got more bookings, increase this percentage as well. So we want to get our rebook rate up. Okay. So you can delegate back. You can use the smart view. You can automate sequences from Aloware, from HubSpot to rebook these individuals that missed their appointment. Now, going back to, where was I? Sorry, guys. Moving along. Lost my thought. Okay, process. Yep. So going back to this real quick, wherever it is. Cool. So when they're power dialing, right? or they're, for example, we also do upcoming appointments. So they always confirm their appointments. We're not going to touch on that now, right? A great alternative for power dialing in the evening is to manually follow up with any prospects that you've already spoken with or cherry pick based on activity, right? You can't expect your reps just to power dial every single time, all day, every day. If they're hitting a lull, if they're not getting a high, answer rate, teach them to cherry pick, teach them to use the system, teach them to be effective in your guys' platforms, inside of the CRM, inside of Aloware, right? The last thing you want to do is have a big set team or a big closing team or whatever the case may be. And every single morning that you jump on with them, it's, I don't know how to use this. I don't know where to find that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So process, I'm not going to go too far into this. Just wanted to touch on this because if you are implementing this, make sure you take the time, set up a morning checklist, set up a midday checklist, and set up an end of day. All right. Now, for our last piece here, for people, all right, I want to explain something, and it's this middle point right here. When you roll out new process, new systems, right, it's really easy to get everybody working on and in that process, in that system for a few days, maybe for a week, right? Maybe even for 2 weeks, but it falls off. Okay. And the reason that it falls off is because one, sometimes it's just easier not to do it. Also, a lot of people don't use it long enough to get the results that it's actually there to give you. Okay. Or they don't actually learn it, right? They just want to stick to their old ways. The best way to roll out any new system, any new process is with competition. Period. Okay. Very easy, very simple way to do this. I'll go over a real example is you roll out the new system, you put everybody in a scoreboard. You guys can do this on HubSpot. I'm not going to pull up the HubSpot right now. However, you're giving them points based on the calls and the revenue that's generating. You give them a first place, second place, third place, right? Hey guys, for the next 30 days, we're rolling out this new system. Here's how it works. Here's your training. We're running a competition. Top dialer is going to get, first place, $1,000 bonus. Second place person is going to get 500, third place, 250, whatever you guys want to do. But you roll it out with clear competition so that you get adherence to the system, so it gets adopted fully. All right. Now, with that being said, two other things that I'm going to go over real fast, just to kind of put some icing on the cake here, is if you're just getting this started and you don't know your numbers and your reps are trying to understand how to make money and you roll this new system out and maybe you're going from, hey, you guys call and do whatever you want to dead set, 100 dials a day. This is what we're doing. Here's your new system. We just spent money on it. We got it implemented, right? We need to see our return. You can't do that without setting proper expectations with your team. Okay. Now, this is a completely different slide deck that I'm going to go over real quick, but I do want to pull this up because it's very relevant. Here we go. So this is you after building a whole bunch of different cool stuff in your system, right? Explaining to your sales team how great it's going to be, how much results it's going to give them. And this is your sales team basically like, I don't know why we're doing this. Doesn't make any sense. How is this going to make me better? Right? They're basically just confused. You're all hyped up explaining how great this is going to be. And it's just, there's not clear expectations set on both sides. Okay. When we are rolling something out or when we're building a setter team, I should say this should be done well before any of this stuff actually goes into play. What we need to make sure is we need to understand our call to connect percentage, right? So let's say it's 10%, our connect to set percentage. So out of how many people we connect with, right? This is the number that we set. Okay. So out of every 4 conversations, we set 1, right? If you guys have a 2-call close process or a 1-call close process, how many discos move to closing calls or how many closing calls close, right? What's our close percentage or closing call to take in, right? So our show rate, average cash up front. Now, what you can do with this is you can start to set up red zone, okay? Expectation zone and above expectation zone, okay? Now, the reason this is important is because when your reps are making the dials and doing all this stuff, right? If they're way below expectation, they're still wondering why they're not making money and they're, barking up your tree and constantly asking you for more stuff. Hey, lead flow isn't good, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. You can point back to this and say, hey, the reason you're not making money is because you're in your red zone. Here's your average yearly median. Here's your monthly median, right? If you get your metrics up, this is what you could be making. If you go above and beyond, this is what you can be making. Okay. And you build all of this off of the formulas above. So when you roll this stuff out, you can explain to them why more volume, why better active prospects and calling and all of this stuff makes sense. Last piece, I'm going to go over real quick, which you guys are going to get a copy of this and you can see it. Meeting cadence. How are you QCing your reps? How are you meeting with them? How are you reviewing calls? There's a great feature in HubSpot. This goes over meeting cadence and how we run it, how we scale up our teams, role play, call QC, all of that stuff, make it fun. Bonuses end of week if we're hitting goals, etc. 2 features I want to touch on. Inside of HubSpot, there's a new list or a new feature. All of your calls, if you're using Aloware, is obviously going to be recorded inside of here. Your reps can push these calls to QC lists, which as a sales manager, you can follow these lists. So if I have sales QC list and I follow it, anytime a call recording gets put in here, I can go in, listen to it, review it, and move it into the call QC request completed. It'll notify them. And now you're coaching your reps. Okay. Number 2 is goals. Inside of HubSpot, you can set up all of your goals. So in case you don't want to actually use like a spreadsheet or something along these lines, you can go into HubSpot. You can actually set up your users and your team's goals based on calls, based on meetings being set, based on all of this different stuff. And it's going to track it and it's going to notify you if they exceed it daily, don't exceed it daily, if it's over, if it starts, all these different things. So you can use this and you can leverage it for your reporting. All right. With that being said, that brings me to the end here. I hope I didn't go too fast for everybody, but Joe, Andrea, I will hand it back to you guys.
Awesome. Excellent job, Aaron. I'm sure everyone found value from what Aaron was saying. I mean, from the first thing that he was talking about to building value and making yourself worth listening to on the call by ultimately seeing where that lead came from. That's super important, right? The biggest things that you can do as a setter are provide value as a call and on a call and have reason, right? What's the reason for calling them and what's the value behind why you're calling them? So that was super impactful. The next is obviously marrying all of the systems along with this lead scoring or whatever you want to call it to be able to actually execute on. So that's all that we really have for you today. We do have about 7 minutes for questions. So feel free to drop some questions in the chat and we'll go ahead and answer them.
I like questions, guys. Even if you think it's stupid, please ask. Let's see. Best webinar.
And one thing to note, Aaron was talking about competition, right? How do you create competition? People often think that it only has to be related to dollars or having some kind of a war or event that drives the setters and closers to be more fierce, right? By putting this data in front of them, right? So all the reporting behind Aloware and HubSpot, by putting the data in front of them, that creates natural competition. Why? Like Aaron said before, if you have a Slack channel that says lead originally set to Joe and then closed by Aaron, that data is making them think, what if I was just a little bit faster on my speed to lead, right? So putting the data of calls, the amount of time it takes deals to close, the amount of dials that someone's doing a day and all that fun stuff in an easy and accessible place for the reps is super, super important for driving that natural competition, right? Because as salespeople, we all want to be the best. So if you see that someone is making more dials than you, you're going to want to make more dials than them, right?
Yeah, 100%. Looks like we got a question. Anonymous. What do we do? Answer live or how do I
Yeah, let's answer live. So we got a question here. What are the most problems you see with new teams that you're working with? So Aaron, would love to hear from you. What are the no-brainers that and the problems that constantly come to you from new clients?
Yeah, and I think Joe will agree with this very, very much so. So what's sexy about what we just talked about? The automation, the system, the setup, the delegation, the workflows, all of these different stuff. What people tend to skip is the actual process and people part, right? They don't set up expectations. They don't set up KPIs. They don't show people how they can make money. They don't do the small things that Joe was just talking about, right? Like they miss all of the actual foundational pieces of their people, their process, their systems, right? And they try and jump into like version 2 of everything, right? It's like somebody who doesn't even have a CRM or is doing any kind of outbound dialing or anything along those lines, who wants to literally just put in AI on top of nothing, right? Because AI is the hot stuff, right? So I think the biggest mistake that we see people make is, one, going back to the very beginning of the presentation, they're trying to look at every single metric and they're trying to fix every single metric in a month, in 2 months. What they don't understand is, quite literally, if they, going back to this point, right? If they can start to understand their metrics, right? And they're currently here, month 1, they can work on getting this up 5%, 2%, 3%. Month 2, they can work on getting this up 5%, 2%, 3%. Month 3, we can work on rebooking, right? So it's focus and it's priority around laying a foundation of how you're actually going to do the process, how you're training your people on how to use the stuff, et cetera, before going all in on automation and systems and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to have the foundation in place first. And that's usually what messes people up the most, is because they just try and go hard on systems, hard on tech, hard on automation, hard on all these different things. And they're still wondering why they're not meeting the revenue goals, or their people are leaving them and stuff along those lines.
And the last point to that really is, once you have all of this in place, and Aaron spoke on it earlier, but it's accountability, right? It's making sure that your reps are hitting the KPIs, and it's having a system in place, whether it be, you know, a 3-strike system with a PIP or something on those lines for when they're not hitting those numbers. It really drives home the point that the system needs to be followed and implemented, or nothing is going to work.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a few questions that are probably a little bit longer. If you guys need any help getting Aloware set up, connected, HubSpot set up, anything that we just talked about, I'm going to drop Riley's booking link, and he'll go a lot more in depth on some of this stuff if you guys need to, but it's in the chat. Let's see, next question. Let's see, we've got some in the chat. Andrea, I'll let you do the
Yeah, so our next question is, Jake, what do you find the most common issue for high no-show rates? It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. It really depends on the lead source, right? So there's a lot of different reasons for people not showing up for calls, okay? One, it could be your industry. Maybe like you work with realtors who are always on call, right? So they're just always busy, which means they may need a lot more automation, pre-call, whatever the case may be. Second, right, you could be answering all of their questions with their pre-call stuff, or your setters are answering all their questions on the initial call, and the person's making their, we are in the realtor industry. Yep, there you go, right? So your example, realtor industry, the way that we would do it is we'd set up pre-call that's not one size fits all, okay? And we'd set up our upcoming meetings, Smart View, to confirm all of our appointments. So if a setter sets an appointment, right, it wouldn't just be P1, P2, P3, my no-shows. They'd also have their upcoming appointments, which is 0 to 3 days out from any meeting that's coming up. And the setter is also responsible for confirming that appointment that they set, okay? Now, the second part to that is the dynamic, basically like pre-call correspondence. If somebody's super active, they book a meeting, right? They're opening all your emails, they're responding to you, right? You can be a little less aggressive with pushing a bunch of automation towards them. If they're in the middle, right, maybe it's a moderate. If they're on the low side, they're not opening emails, they're not responding, they're not watching, they're not going to your website, right? The automation should be super aggressive, right? Most people just have pre-call, one size fits all. Everybody who books gets the same exact thing. And a lot of times that doesn't necessarily work, okay? Cool.
And let's see.
Maybe
If
one or
you
two
have,
more.
yeah, we got with that P1 through 3 system, if you have multiple marketing funnels and place leads that can come now from how you add the context to the setter, explain how you specifically, how that lead was specifically looking at the different marketing funnels. Okay.
Let me
I'm trying
see.
to, yeah.
Yeah, let me read it real
I'm
quick.
rereading that.
With that P1 to 3 system, if you have multiple marketing funnels and places leads come from, how do you add context to the setters to explain what specifically that lead was looking at within the different marketing funnels? So if you go back and rewatch this, I'm not going to pull it up right now just because I want to be quick with this. It'll show the last page that they viewed. You can also start to show the ads that they saw okay, and the funnels that they actually converted through, okay? So you can set up your columns in those P1, P2, P3 lists to show where they came from, right? So what ad they saw, right? What page converted them, right? And ultimately what source they came through as well, whether it's paid, organic, email, Google search, whatever. So you can set up all the context that they need while they're calling, and it's just going to show them right real quick where they're from. So it's very, very simple. It's actually a standard setup inside of HubSpot. Those properties are all standard as long as you have the HubSpot tracking code and you have your ads manager connected through HubSpot. It'll automatically show whether it was paid, organic, which ad campaign they came from, which ad set, which creative, which page they converted through, all these different things. So it's actually quite simple to see where they all came from. All right, one more.
Last question. Yeah. Speaking about how to best nurture the lower score leads so they end up on that P1 list. Is it through videos, emails, or how are you doing this?
Yeah. So here, let me do this real quick and hopefully I can do this really, really fast. So, all right, so let's talk about P1 real quick. I'm going to be super, super quick. All right, so let's say they're much lower quality, right? What we want to do is, let's say tier 1 leads are coming in, right? We want to automatically enroll them, obviously, into a correspondence path, right? Let's say maybe 30 days long, right? And what we're wanting to track is what links they click on and what emails they open, what pages they go to, etc. And let's say our line in the sand right here, right, is anytime somebody, let's say, opens 3 emails, okay, or they click a link on like a call to action page on a funnel or something along those lines, okay, or whatever they actually like actions we can track that we want to set up. When this happens, right, we want to drop this person from this cadence into, obviously, our P2 or into our setter delegation and get them working the lead now, right? However, when this drops down and it goes into the delegation and it starts the correspondence from the setter, hey, I saw you were checking out a few things, wanted to see if you're blah, 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 whatever, right? It's going to be different than obviously your P2 because you know where they're coming from, okay? So you know exactly what they're doing. So for example, let's say you had a big podcast and you had a bunch of people coming from a podcast. They're opening and clicking on different podcast sessions that you're sending out to them. They click on one specifically, right? You can start to automate different things and you can still to pull properties in to start populating. Hey, I saw you clicked on the Joe Rogan blank, blank, blank podcast. And I was wondering, blah, 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 how, etc. But the P1s, you want to be as automated as possible, especially if you have a lot of P1s and P2s, to try and filter these in to your setters. You don't want to do this where you just drop them into the setters, because what's going to happen is they're just going to get overflowed, flooded with low quality. It's going to muddy up your actual P1, P2, P3 system. And your setters are going to be pissed because they're going to be doing a ton of dialing with little to no results. Cool. All right.
Yeah, I think that's it. Aaron, that was amazing, obviously. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure everyone took away at least one valuable thing that they can ultimately implement right away. And that was the real goal of this webinar. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Andrea, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. As you guys know, Aaron is one of our partners with Sales Momentum. If you have questions about how to better implement your HubSpot or scaling your team processes, Aaron and his team are your go-to guys. If you have more questions about the Aloware part of things, we can always handle those. It's important to note that Aloware and HubSpot are better together. We'll continue to do more, sending out more emails on why this integration is so great, why it helps with your sales process more than anything. So remember, automations, they are no longer a thing of, the future. It's very much real now. So use them. Save yourself time, money, and some takeaways. I'll be sending around, we'll be sending a recap on what we covered, as well as a link to the recording and some other just one-pager and documents on this. So look out for that, and be sure to tune in for the next webinar.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.